For decades, civil litigation in the Philippines was defined by discretionary delays. Lawyers frequently relied on mutual professional courtesy to secure postponements, turning trials into years-long marathons. The 2019 amendments rendered that culture of leniency obsolete. The updated rules transitioned the system from a series of flexible guidelines to a mandatory mechanical engine. Trial dates are no longer suggestions, they are fixed operational deadlines. At the center of this engine is Rule 30. It establishes a continuous trial system with a non-extendable hard cap. The entire presentation of evidence must be completed within 300 calendar days. Because Rule 30 relies on precise interlocking numerical triggers, a single miscalculation in the trial calendar carries terminal consequences for a case. To navigate this, we must conduct a forensic audit of Sections 1 through 9. For legal practitioners and examinees, survival in the modern trial court depends on moving away from arguments for equity and towards strict procedural compliance with this 300-day countdown. Section 1 defines the schedule of trial. It mandates that trial dates must be continuous and strictly followed as set forth in the pretrial order. This timeline visualizes the 90-90-90-30 rule. Plaintiff, defendant, and third parties each get 90 days. Rebuttal gets 30. Standard trials end within 180 days, while complex cases cap at 300. The defendant's clock begins within 30 days after the ruling on the plaintiff's evidence. A common error involves parties attempting to extend these limits through mutual agreement. However, even if both sides stipulate to a 12-month trial period, Section 1 renders that agreement procedurally void. The 300-day limit is a jurisdictional ceiling. The court retains the authority to shorten these periods based on the number of witnesses, but it possesses no power to lengthen them. By eliminating extensions through professional courtesy, Section 1 forces parties to finish evidence presentation within the allotted timeframe or forfeit remaining dates. Section 2 restricts the court's power to adjourn or postpone trials. Any delay is now viewed as an exception to the rule of continuous proceedings. This is the 1-3 cap. A single adjournment cannot exceed 1 month, and the aggregate total of all adjournments combined cannot exceed 3 months for the entire trial. Examiners often test who has the authority to bypass these limits. While it may seem within the discretion of an executive judge, Section 2 explicitly reserves this power for the court administrator of the Supreme Court, who must provide authorization in writing. Postponements carry a heavy penalty. The time lost is deducted from the moving party's allotted 90-day period. They are required to terminate their evidence presentation on the remaining dates originally agreed upon in the pretrial order. Section 3 addresses the illness of a party or counsel. A motion to postpone on this ground is valid only if it meets 3 requisites: a sworn affidavit, indispensable presence, and excusable illness. A standard medical certificate without an accompanying sworn affidavit causes procedural failure. Under Rule 30, a certificate alone is insufficient, making the motion defective without the oath. Furthermore, if a sick lead counsel has a competent co-counsel present who can conduct the examination, the indispensable requirement is not met. The illness does not stop the trial clock. Physical inability is only a valid ground for delay when it is documented by sworn testimony and when no other representative can perform the task. Section 4 establishes the operational schedule for the courts, maximizing judicial efficiency through a strict weekly grid. Trials are held exclusively from Monday to Thursday. Fridays are reserved strictly for hearing motions.
To ensure precision, courts must call cases at exactly 8:30 a.m. and 2 p.m. To prevent tactical ambushes, court calendars must be posted outside the courtroom at least 1 day before the scheduled hearing. Section 5 dictates the order of trial. Evidence presentation follows a logical sequence: plaintiff, defendant, third party, adverse counterclaimants, and rebuttal. This sequence is limited by the pretrial order. Attempts to introduce evidence on issues not defined during pretrial are subject to immediate objection on the ground of irrelevance. Section 5 also allows for a reverse trial. This occurs when the defendant admits the material allegations of the complaint, but interposes a lawful affirmative defense, such as payment. Since the debt is admitted, the burden shifts and the defendant must present their evidence first. By mechanizing the weekly calendar and the flow of evidence, Sections 4 and 5 ensure the trial moves toward a decision without procedural wandering.
Section 6 accelerates the end of the trial by removing the requirement for written formal offers of evidence. The entire process is now oral. The offer of evidence, the opposing party's comment, and the court's ruling must be made immediately in open court. A common procedural error involves a judge granting a party 10 days to submit a written comment on an oral offer. Under Section 6, the judge must compel an immediate oral comment and issue a ruling before the hearing concludes. Section 7 encourages an agreed statement of facts. By stipulating to the facts in writing, the parties can bypass the testimony phase entirely. If all material facts are agreed upon, the court bypasses the introduction of evidence and moves directly to rendering judgment on those facts. However, substantive law limits this mechanism. Stipulations are prohibited in actions for the annulment of marriage or legal separation, to prevent collusion and protect the state's interest in the family. Mandatory oral offers and factual stipulations are the gears that keep the trial moving fast enough to conclude within the 300-day limit. Section 8 addresses the suspension of actions. It clarifies that the rules of court must defer to substantive law, such as the civil code. A judge cannot suspend a trial indefinitely. Any pause must be based on specific legal provisions, such as the requirement for earnest efforts toward compromise between family members. Section 9 preserves the baseline rule that the judge must personally receive the evidence to observe witness demeanor and credibility. Evidence reception can only be delegated to a clerk of court in 2 instances: default hearings where only the plaintiff presents evidence, or by written agreement of both parties. Even then, the delegated clerk must be a member of the bar. A critical limitation exists during delegation. The clerk has no power to rule on objections. If an objection is raised, the clerk must merely note it and refer the matter to the judge, who must resolve it within 10 days. These sections ensure that while the trial is built for speed, the core judicial function remains protected and delegated only under the strictest conditions. Sections 1 through 9 form an interlocking chain designed to close the procedural loopholes that previously caused institutional delay. The 2019 amendments replaced judicial leeway with a mandate for speed and immediate oral adjudication. When analyzing Rule 30, the correct interpretation is always the one that restricts extensions and accelerates the progression toward judgment. Once the pretrial order is issued, the 300-day clock begins, and the mechanism cannot be stopped. Rule 30 has transformed the Philippine civil trial into a strictly timed operational sequence, where every hearing is a measured step toward a mandatory 300-day deadline.